Okay, so you're probably here because of all the headlines about Druski Diddy and a lawsuit, a serious lawsuit. And well, let's just dive right into it. We're going to try to unpack this legal case and all the social media chaos surrounding it. And some of the details, I'll just warn you, are pretty intense.
Yeah, it's interesting right off the bat because it does involve, some big names in entertainment. Like we're talking comedian Druski, obviously music mogul Diddy, and Ashley Parham, the woman who filed the lawsuit. And they're all connected to an alleged incident back in March 2018 in Orinda, California.
And the allegations themselves, they're disturbing. Parham is accusing these high-profile figures of drugging, kidnapping, and sexual assault, all at what was supposed to be just a gathering.
I think what's really striking is a detail about a TV remote being used in the alleged assault. And it's, whether true or not, this kind of vivid and disturbing imagery can really stick with people. A jury. It makes you wonder if its inclusion was a deliberate legal strategy by her legal team.
It does make you think about the legal tactics at play. And, it's not just Diddy involved here. The lawsuit also named NFL star Odell Beckham Jr. and singer Jaguar Wright.
It really is. It's like a huge part of the entertainment world is kind of under scrutiny now. And, kind of speaks to a broader trend that we're seeing right now, where social media, it's almost like a parallel legal system where public opinion forms online, sometimes even before all the facts are even out there.
Yeah.
So what are your initial thoughts on that, knowing how quickly information and sometimes misinformation can spread online?
It's a good point. And yeah, I wonder sometimes if traditional media can even keep up, with the speed at which information is spread and opinions are formed online. But getting back to the case, though, Druski, he didn't waste any time responding to these allegations. He went straight to Threads and issued like a full denial.
Yeah, he did. And he didn't just deny any involvement. He claimed he wouldn't even have been with Diddy back in 2018, which, that's a pretty bold strategy, putting yourself out there so publicly, so early. Do you think that points to genuine innocence? Or is it a carefully crafted PR move?
I think that's what everybody's trying to figure out right now. On the one hand, you got to admire his directness, but then there's that question, can he actually prove that he wasn't in Diddy's circle back then? If there's no evidence to support his claim, that could really backfire.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the lawsuit itself, it brings up a much bigger issue. The culture of these high-profile gatherings, what kind of environment allows these kinds of allegations to even come up? It makes you think about the power dynamics, you know?
It does, and it raises some really uncomfortable questions about wealth and fame. Do they create different rules for people? And while Druski has been very vocal, the response from Diddy has been pretty quiet.
That's true. It's interesting to think about, why. Perhaps it's, a legal strategy. Maybe it just reflects a totally different approach to handling these accusations. We know Diddy has a massive empire and a guilty verdict in this case that could have just enormous financial implications for him.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if there's a sense that he has more to lose than Druski, at least, in a material sense. But on the other hand, Druski's career, which really relies on public image, could be equally as vulnerable.
Absolutely. This isn't just about legal stuff. This is about reputation.
Yeah.
It's potential for irreparable damage, regardless of the outcome of the trial.
And then there's the impact on Ashley Parham, the accuser. It's important to remember that this is a real person at the center of all this. This is somebody who's alleging a really traumatic experience, This case, it's her story. And we have to keep that in mind even as we go through all the details and try to analyze everything.
It's important to acknowledge the human element here. We're talking about legal strategy and the impacts of social media, but at the heart of this is Ashley Parham's story, her experience.
Right, and her allegations, they do paint a really disturbing picture. And, it brings up these important questions about what kind of culture allows for this kind of behavior, especially in an industry like entertainment.
One detail that's really captured a lot of attention is the alleged use of a TV remote during the assault. And this detail, it's so specific, so unusual. It makes you think, was this included in the lawsuit as a way to kind of make the allegations more impactful?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Do you think it was a legal strategy, including such a specific and disturbing detail, just to sort of make it more impactful to a jury?
It's possible, yeah. In a case like this, where it's kind of he said, she said, a shocking detail can really, it can stick with people and potentially influence a jury.
It's really fascinating to see how fast this case has become this focal point for this larger conversation about power and accountability and, the role of social media in shaping public perception.
Yeah, it seems like every time a high-profile individual is accused of something like this, It starts a debate about whether different rules apply to celebrities. Do they have a bigger responsibility to behave ethically, or are they simply more vulnerable to public scrutiny?
It's a tough question, and I think the answer might be a little bit of both. On one hand, yes, celebrities, they do have this platform. They have an influence that most people don't. Their actions can really impact a lot of people, so yeah, it's understandable that there's this expectation that they should be role
Yeah.
models.
But on the other hand, they're human too. They make mistakes, just like anyone else. The challenge is finding that balance. Holding them accountable, yeah, but not assuming guilt before they've had a chance to defend themselves.
And it feels like social media can really blur the lines sometimes. It creates this echo chamber where accusations can spread so quickly and often without any regard for due process or the presumption of innocence.
Yeah, this situation really highlights how social media, sometimes it's like a parallel legal system
Mhm.
where public opinion just forms, before the facts are even known. Do you think that's fair to approach serious allegations this way?
It's tricky. It's a double-edged sword. Social media, on the one hand, it gives a voice to people who might not otherwise have one.
Yeah.
But it can also be used to spread misinformation and damage reputations before anyone has a chance to defend themselves.
Right. And it's important to remember that in a legal context, the burden of proof, it lies with the accuser, not the accused. Ashley Parham's team will need to present, really compelling evidence. And Diddy and Druski's lawyers, well, they'll have to challenge those claims.
It's a high-stakes game. The consequences for everyone involved could be huge. Diddy's facing the potential collapse of his empire. Druski's career could be irreparably damaged. And for Ashley Parham, this is about justice and accountability for what she says was a really traumatic experience.
And, as this case moves forward, it's going to be really interesting to see how both sides present their arguments. Will there be any physical evidence? Will there be witnesses to corroborate, either side of the story?
Yeah, I'm particularly curious about the evidence, if any, that Druski will present to support his claim that he wasn't associated with Diddy back in 2018. If he can't back that up, it could really undermine his entire defense.
It's definitely a risky move, making such a bold statement so early on. Maybe he has concrete proof. Maybe he's banking on the idea that the lawsuit won't even go to trial. I mean, there's always the chance of an out-of-court settlement.
That's true. Settlements, they're a way for everyone to avoid a trial, which can be, messy and unpredictable. But a settlement, it doesn't necessarily mean someone's guilty. It's often more about mitigating risk, damage control.
And in this case, where the potential damage to reputations is so significant, it wouldn't be surprising if at least one of the parties pushes for a settlement, even if it means, a huge financial payout.
It's going to be really interesting to see how this unfolds in the coming weeks and months. Do you think this case has the potential to set a precedent, especially in terms of how social media is considered in legal proceedings?
Oh, it's definitely possible. I mean, we're seeing more and more cases where social media plays a big role, whether it's used as evidence or as a way to influence public opinion. The courts are still figuring out how to handle this, and this case could be a really important one.
This whole situation it's a cautionary tale for anyone in the public eye. It really highlights how important it is to respond carefully and strategically to allegations, the need for good legal counsel, and the potential for long-lasting repercussions, no matter what the legal outcome is.
It's also a reminder that we, as consumers of information, we need to be careful. We need to be critical about how we engage with these types of stories. It's so easy to get caught up in the drama of it all. But it's important to remember that real lives are affected by this. And justice, real justice, it comes from a fair and impartial legal process, not a trial by social media.
Well said. So where do we go from here? What are the key things to watch for as this case progresses? Okay, so we've talked about the power dynamics and the social media frenzy and the burden of proof and all that. But now, now things get really real. What are the potential legal ramifications here for everyone involved?
Yeah, the stakes are really high here. I mean, for Diddy, we're talking about potential financial ruin. He's built this massive business empire and a guilty verdict. It could result in, huge settlements or even the dismantling of his companies.
It's hard to even imagine someone at his level facing that kind of downfall. But, on the other hand, you have Druski, whose career is built on humor, on public image. Could he even survive this kind of hit to his reputation, even if he is cleared of any wrongdoing?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? And it shows how these types of allegations can have a really lasting impact, regardless of the legal outcome. It makes you think about, the court of public opinion. Is it even possible to fully recover from accusations like this?
This whole thing feels like a cautionary tale, not just for celebrities, but for anyone in a position of power. It makes you examine the systems, the structures that might allow this kind of behavior to happen or protect it. What do you think needs to change to ensure more accountability?
Well, I think part of it is shifting the focus from individual blame to systemic change.
Yeah.
We need to address the power imbalances that are so common in industries like entertainment, where, your access, your opportunities, they often depend on staying in the good graces of the people at the top.
Yeah, it's about creating a space where people feel safe, safe to speak up, without fear of, retribution
Hmm.
or being blacklisted. But what about the legal system? Do you think the laws, are they adequate in terms of protecting both the accusers and the accused?
That's a tough one. I mean, there's always room for improvement, especially when it comes to cases like this. With high-profile people and the influence of social media, it's a whole new set of challenges.
One of the things that's really stuck with me in this case is that detail about the TV remote. It just seems like such a small thing, but it's created this huge ripple effect, publicly. Do you think that's a deliberate legal strategy?
Nope.
Or just a coincidence that this detail has become so central to the whole narrative?
It's hard to say, really, but it's definitely worth thinking about how details like that can influence people in the courtroom and in the court of public opinion. It just goes to show the power of imagery, how even small details can become these symbols of a larger issue.
And it also raises questions about the ethics of using such emotionally charged details. Is it fair to present evidence that might, evoke really strong emotional responses, even if it's relevant to the case?
Yeah.
Where's the line between presenting the facts and trying to manipulate a jury's feelings?
That's something legal professionals deal with all the time. It's a fine line between advocating for your client and taking advantage of emotional vulnerabilities. There are no easy answers. It's a real gray area.
This case has really made us think, about these complex issues, and I really appreciate your perspective on all of this. But, before we wrap up, I want to come back to the human element. Whatever the legal outcome is, this case has had a huge impact on everyone involved.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for Ashley Parham, this is about getting justice, healing from something traumatic. For Diddy and Druski, their reputations, their careers, they're at stake. And for the rest of us watching all of this unfold, it's a reminder that these aren't just abstract legal battles. These are real people with real lives.
It's been a wild ride going through this case, and I think we've all learned a lot about the legal system, about power dynamics in places like Hollywood, about how important it is to be careful, to be critical about how we consume information, especially online.
And, as this story develops, I hope everyone stays informed, stays critical, and stays engaged. Because this case is far from over, and it could really change the way we think about accountability and justice and the role of social media in holding the powerful accountable.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. We'll be back soon with another fascinating case, one that's sure to spark conversation and challenge your perspectives. Until then, stay curious.